Ian and I had a little bit of fun earlier today. We walked around the glass house, so we got to see some architecture, explore a little bit of New Canaan, and get a little sense of where we are right now. But in this room, with this amazing series of art around us, I feel we're need to be much more focused on you, Ian, and the work that has inspired the work that we have here. Can we talk a little bit about how you get inspiration from the greater world? And these, of course, are henge paintings, but it's not just about even Avebury specifically. I think it's something more essential, correct?
The essential problem in painting a painting is it's a two-dimensional flat surface. And if, like me, you don't paint pictures, you paint paintings, then it's a question of how do you make that painting body forth into the world? How do you make it become part of the world? And so I'm constantly looking for source points or jumping off points that will lead me into that area. So Avebury, the big Neolithic standing stones at Avebury, which are 5,000 years old and just stand there in a large circle, was a jumping off point. The stones are maybe 10 feet high. They're raw, physical, massive, and you stand next to them and you feel frail and very human. And it starts from there. It's as simple as that. It's a simple physical feeling of a relationship to another entity in the world, in this case, standing stones.
And standing stones are particularly exciting because of the materiality, the monumentality, both, or something even beyond?
Because they're so emphatic in the world.
Yeah.
One of the problems of painting a painting is that you can never tie anything down. And when you paint paintings as I paint them, in the end you can't even say what the subject matter is. You just go through this process of painting a painting, and at some point it's finished. But if someone is to really say to you, yeah, but what is it? You can't answer that question. It's in this kind of liminal zone on the edge of experience.
Yes.
And I spend a lot of my life as a painter in that territory. And so when I hit something as hard as a stone, then I find it very affirming.
Huh.
And it's like reminding me that I'm still in the real world. So it's a push and pull that goes on all the time.
So in a way, the stone is almost the opposite, kind of the yin versus yang of painting, because painting in a way is so flexible and as opposed to something as permanent, as solid as a megalith.
Yeah, a megalith is what it is. You know, it's not moving and it's not going anywhere, and you're not going to move it either. And whilst a painting, quite what's going on in a painting, quite how you navigate it, how you experience it, is so fluid. I would put it this way: you go to bed at night, and you wake up in the morning, and I'm always surprised that I'm the same person I was the night before. You know, it's like you feel like you might be like Kafka's Beetle. You know, that you go to bed one night and you're a human being, and you wake up the next morning, you're just a very large beetle, you know. But I'm always surprised that I still have the same arms and the same legs.
Really?
And so, so life has on the one level this permanency, this consistency.
Yeah.
You know, we are constant on one level, but on so many other levels, we're in a constant state of flux.
Yes.
And it's the point of flux that intrigues me. And how do I begin to make that evident and sort of manifest it actually in the paintings?
So to you, are the paintings therefore not static? Do they have that same kind of almost vibration of what you're describing? I mean, it's true, our bodies change. They do change every night.
I'm trying to paint paintings where I never feel I get to the bottom of them. I never feel I fully understand them. I can't think there's anything that must be more boring for an artist than to actually fully understand what it is they've done. It seems to me the painting should hold a kind of level of mystery and mystique.
Yes.
Which
in the process?
In the process, and subsequently, it should still hold on to that.
Yes.
And that you as the artist are kind of trusting that. You're actually going with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about this beautiful painting that's behind us
Yeah.
in terms of process? Because I do find that fascinating. I know you've talked also about kind of the body versus the painting. That again, it's a process. Can you relate that a little bit to what's behind us? I'm just looking at this incredible deep blue, and I know that it's not always your way to employ color. Sometimes you are more focused on black and white. In this case, you have selected color. Can you talk about this process and how you came into this finished work?
I normally work predominantly with black and white. I may do a whole series which is white, and sometimes in that series which is white, which is always very ethereal. White is very difficult to pin down.
Yes.
I may do 2 or 3 black paintings which, you know, punch a hole in that and actually become much more solid.
Yeah.
And I made 3 large paintings in this group, which are black, primarily black and white. But the others, there are 10 big paintings this size. There are about 8 paintings the medium size, and maybe 8 or 9 the smaller size. And the others, instead of pairing it with a black element or a white element, I decided to pair it with a color, which to all intents and purposes looks monochrome, or there is actually quite a lot of subtle changes of blues within it.
Yes.
And it was really more to do with, I find color gets decorative very easily. If you use a color, it's so easy to just put a bit of red here and a bit of blue there, and and it serves the purpose, but it can be very, very decorative. And there's always that problem of how do you wed the color so deep into the painting that the body of the painting, the image of the painting, is wedded to the color itself, so you can't separate the two out. So you've made them sort of inseparable.
Yeah.
And so the use of the color in these pieces is an exploration of some of the possibilities, very small area, of what other colors might do in that relationship.
Oh, that's interesting. So if I understand correctly, when you're applying this type of paint, you're not looking to, let's say, build up in a 3-dimensional fashion. You very much want it to be integral with the canvas. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, or is it more about just the light effects of the way this registers in one's eye?
Well, no, I'm very interested in light, but that's something else. If we talk about space, space in painting, there are essentially 3 possibilities. One is the flat surface of the painting, whereby, in a sense, if you paint a monochrome, it's a flat surface like a wall. Mm-hmm. The second alternative, which is the most used device in painting, is perspectival space. Yes. So you go into the painting, you create an illusion of depth inside the painting. There are a few artists, for instance Mark Rothko is one of them, actually paint in front of the painting. So the space he creates isn't so much going into the painting, it's as if it sort of hovers in front of the painting.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in that to and froing, whereby you're not actually pinning the space down, but you're moving through this zone of inside on the surface and possibly coming forwards.
Yes.
And how do you kind of navigate that spatially? As a painter, you spend a lot of time, the painting is here and you are here, you spend a lot of time going backwards and forwards to the painting, working on it. And you're navigating that distance all the time.
And does it shift while you're painting it? As you go through the process of creating a work like this, does it feel as though in some ways it's receding, in some ways it's pulling out in terms of this kind of being in front versus not?
Yeah, sometimes it seems to come out more, sometimes it seems to sit more on the surface, sometimes it appears to go into the surface more.
Yes.
But even when it goes into the surface, I don't want it to go into the surface as perspectival space.
Right.
I just want it to go into the painting as a kind of amorphous space, like you're jumping into a big pillow or something like that, which doesn't have any kind of true perspectival depth to it,
right,
but just has a sort of a vague notion of depth within it.
Well, it's almost like an essential aspect of going into color and light. I mean, in some ways, as you're describing this, I'm thinking of like a James Turrell, where you just are entering into this environment. It either surrounds you or pops in front of you, and you can't really tell, is it out or in, but you're somehow encapsulated in color or in the painted surface?
Yeah, the light intrigues me enormously, and even in the black paintings, although they look, they're heavy and black, I'm still intrigued by how much light can I actually put into the painting, or give a sense of there actually being an inner light inside the painting.
Right.
And that's very, very important to me, to hold on to that. If I feel a painting is flattening out and it's actually becoming dead, and that life is going out of it, then I will discard it. I will take it off the stretcher, and I will start to try and make the same painting all over again.
I see. If it loses that sense of light.
Yeah, it becomes inert, and at that juncture, the painting has lost its life force. I mean, it sounds terrible, but I think paintings are alive. I think paintings are either breathing in or they're breathing out.
Yeah.
Some paintings sort of suck life in, and there are other paintings which seem to be emanating a force outwards.
Yes.
And it's a push and pull, and again, I'm intrigued by that push and pull, but the painting has to have that.
Well, it's a powerful dynamic if it can do that, and not easily achieved, may I add.
Yeah.
So I imagine that is an interesting struggle one has in studio in order to accomplish that.
Yeah.
And again, can you talk a little bit maybe just about how that perhaps this process plays out, for example, in the work behind us? It's very interesting to me to just think about staying with a black and white palette, which is limiting in some ways, but maybe in some ways is freeing, because you can focus so essentially on what you're describing without the distraction, perhaps, of color. It's very seductive. I mean, that blue is, you all agree, right? That's extremely seductive to dive into that color. But there's a different kind of study going on in the monochrome.
Yeah. When the decision is made to use a color, be it black and white or even if to go into blue, then in a sense the decision is made. So I then don't have to keep decorating with color. That decision is made. So then I can get back to my key concerns of working with form, working with the possibility of actually making a painting which feels solid in the world. So I would like that to feel as solid in the world as a table and a chair.
Seriously?
Yeah, I mean it's a sort of fool's gold, it's impossible, but nevertheless one would like to try and feel one could do that it's a presence in the world that is as physical as a table or a chair.
And it has, I think a lot of that comes down to one's perception.
Yeah,
how
exactly.
people see such a thing.
How you see, yeah.
That's
So
great.
the black paintings, I always see them as being about light. In a way, there are two ways of understanding black. One is you can understand black as mood. So you can say a painting represents a dark mood. It's sort of heavy and black. Yeah. Yep. I don't see the paintings like that. I see them purely as paintings which are painted with the color black. But it in no way reflects a concern of mine with the more somber side or the more macabre sense of life. For instance, about a year ago, I was working on 3 black paintings.
Yes.
And I said to my wife, I've got to stop working with black for a while. And she said, why is that? I said, I'm just feeling I'm getting heavy with it. And I'm losing the lightness of touch, and I'm losing the lightness of feel. And I'm starting, if you like, to go into the black zone of mood. And I didn't want to go into that. So I stopped working with the black paintings and went into a couple of white paintings just to sort of lift the mood out again.
Do you find that most of the work has an emotional content, or in many respects is it more purely formal, in the sense that you really are looking at the way of light emanating, a spatial aspect, as opposed to something more...
No, the light, the structure, all of those are the building blocks of the painting. They're what you build a painting with. So if you like, they're the mechanics of building a painting. Just like a car mechanic takes the parts of a car. So you're taking all of these other things, light, structure, color, to build the car, or to build a painting. But actually you don't want that to finish there, because then it's just a formal painting.
Okay.
You've got to somehow try to take in some kind of emotional aspect of your life into the painting, so that the painting does hold an emotional depth, an emotional charge. Without that, it's meaningless. It doesn't hold anything. But this is a very tricky area, because if you try and force it into the painting, then it becomes self-conscious.
It has to happen more naturally, would you say? Or is it
has to happen almost by default.
Okay.
You've got to play this game with it, whereby you're not doing it, but actually you know you are doing it. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to sort of half in denial in order.
Gentle dance.
The gentle dance. It's like walking on eggs, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
And if you push it too far to be consciously trying to sort of charge the painting,
Yes.
then it will fall flat. You've got to let it keep dancing on that edge. And of course, finding that edge can be quite difficult.
Absolutely. And you and I have talked a little bit about this in an earlier conversation. These are not paintings that you develop quickly. You live with this work and you work in a series. For example, any of the large pieces that are here. From start to finish, how much time do you live with these canvases?
It can be anything, 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years. So
I start on a group of paintings, and I may start at pretty much at the same time, 10 paintings.
yes.
I work on one painting,
Yeah.
and I take it so far, and then I put it aside, and then I go to another painting, and I start working on that.
Yes.
I take that so far and I put it aside again. And so in the end, I may have 10 paintings, all in different states of being worked on,
Yes.
but none of them actually all the way there.
Yeah.
So what happens then is I take out one of those paintings and I may spend 2 weeks doing nothing more than looking at that painting because I haven't seen it for 3 months. It's getting my head back into it, getting my eye back into it, trying to understand what it is I actually did.
Right.
And then I start working on it all again. And this process of in and out with the painting can go on several times.
Yes.
And I don't have a day when I think, oh, I've finished the painting. You know, I put a blob down and I think that's it, the painting's finished. I put a blob down or I put a mark down or a block down. And then I think I'll stop working on the painting, I put it away.
Yes.
And then I may come back to it again 3 months later, and I put it on the wall, and I look at it, and I look at it, and I think, and I look, and I look, and I think, I don't know what to do to it. So I put it away again. And then I leave it, and 3 months later, or whatever, it could be 6 months later,
Yes.
I bring it out again, and I look at it again, and I think, I still don't know what to do with it. I just don't know where to go with it.
It's a patient process, which is quite extraordinary.
And then this may be, since the last time I touched the painting, maybe a year.
Yeah.
And then I look at it and I think, well, if I don't know what to do to it, it must be finished.
I was just going to ask, how do you know when it's done? It's somehow, it either doesn't speak to you anymore, or it speaks to you in a more profound way, where you say, oh, I now see it's there?
Well, I just don't know where to take it further, so it must be there.
The journey is done.
The journey is done. But I'm a great believer in the decision when a painting is finished isn't the decision of finishing it, it's the decision how to start it.
That was my next, you're asking your own questions.
Oh, sorry.
No, I love it. I think it's fantastic. I was just curious, what is the harder part? Starting, finishing, or getting through the process?
Starting.
Starting. The blank page, so to speak. I mean, I'm a writer.
Exactly, the white page, the white sheet.
Yeah.
And knowing when to start it and how to start it. I have to have a kind of, for want of a better expression, a kind of, I can't picture the image, but I have a ghosting sense of its presence. So I know the feel of it, if you're with me.
Yes.
And then the process of painting the painting is finding that feel. And I have to hang on to that feel. And this is the discipline for me of working, is I have to hang on to that feel sometimes for 3 years. And if I let it drift, then I lose the painting. It becomes something else. And then if you like, the character of the painting becomes too complex.
That is fascinating to me. So basically, you sense the character as you're working through it?
It becomes more concrete, so to speak.
It becomes more of itself.
More of itself, yeah.
In a way, it's not so different from sculpture in a way, that in terms of the thing is starting to take form, but using a very, very different set of tools.
In a strange way, I think I work like a sculptor. I think there are a few sculptors who think like painters, and I think there are a few painters who think like sculptors, and I think in a funny way I think like a sculptor. even though I make paintings.
Right, and you mentioned to me, you certainly know architects, I imagine you know sculptors, so, but you do not work in three-dimensional work, you don't do sculpture, but it's somehow that this process, there's an alignment.
There is an alignment, yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I love the idea of just knowing it's done because there's nothing left that you feel you can do to it, which is extraordinary. And there really is a similarity in terms of writing, because how do you know when you're done?
Yeah,
You
quite.
I'm going to put the end at the end. But no, but in truth, I think painting, it's much trickier. And also knowing when to stop, because one could do too much
Yeah.
and overwork it. And when you've achieved it, it speaks to you,
Yeah.
which is extraordinary. I'm just looking around the room at some of the pieces, and Rachel, if you keep us honest, I see we're already a half hour in, let's maybe speak a little bit further. Can you talk about scale? I mean, this is such a large piece behind us. You've got some that are medium scale and, of course, some smaller pieces. How different is it when you're working at a different scale? Does that make much of a difference to you, or is it just a question of mood? Again, you and I talked about this a little bit beforehand, but for the purposes of our audience, to talk a little bit about starting with the large works and then working perhaps with smaller works.
I tend to stay with the same scale for a period of time. So I will work on big paintings. I find it terribly difficult to then jump to a smaller scale. Okay. And I find it impossible when I'm painting to work on works on paper.
Okay.
Just the scale is too different. And the piece of paper is the hand and the eye. Mm-hmm. A large painting is the body and is the body. Yeah. So I find the jump too great. Yeah. So I tend to work on just large paintings, and then at some point I may say, okay, I'll take a break and I'll work on a group of medium-sized paintings, or I'll work on a group of smaller paintings. And then with the paperworks, I tend only to work on them after I've finished the paintings. So they don't precede the paintings, they come after the painting.
They're almost an after image.
Yeah.
That you've already gotten this whole feeling from working on the larger works, and then you create these smaller works.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating, because so many artists, as you and I discussed, might start with studies.
Yeah, I don't do studies.
These are in no way studies.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating. Wow. I'm so blown away by all this.
Well, thank you.
Fold into these. Would it be okay with you if we take maybe just a question or two from the crowd?
Yeah, if anyone has a question.
Does anybody have any questions that you want us to address? You're being so proper, sitting back. No, maybe not. Yes, Ms. Ma'am.
Do you like to work? I notice your paper pieces are smaller than their paintings. Do you work on large scale paper as well?
I do sometimes, but I mean, perhaps the largest scale paper I would work on is, sort of 4 or 5 feet, not much bigger than that. The thing about paper is I love the surface of paint. So these are all on handmade paper, so it's sort of individually handmade sheets. I don't make it, but it's made by a small printing mill. And I love the feel of paper. And for me, if you go too big, you sort of take the paperness out of the paper, if you're with me. It sounds funny, and also I work on the paperworks with watercolor and gouache, and the paint seems to work better when it's got a certain scale to it, a certain size to it. For instance, when I underpaint this large piece, the first paint that goes on, the black section, the first paint that goes on is very diluted black paint, which I pour on the surface, and then after that I put it up and it dries out, and then I put it back up on the wall, and then I carry on painting. When I work on the works on paper, I also work with the possibilities of pooling paint underneath the more solid forms. And there's a scale to the paperworks and how the liquid, the watercolor or the gouache, how it pools at a certain size, if you're with me. And if I go beyond that size, then actually I've sort of lost the quality of the pooling or the natural processes that are occurring in the paperwork. So to answer your question, I go medium-sized big, but I don't make huge works on paper.
May I ask one more question? 'Cause
Yeah.
I love your work, and it looks simple from the outside, but it has a lot of forethought. So I see you work on raw canvas, or it's or do you work on raw and also treated canvas?
These are all sealed. They are sealed with acrylic primer, which is a transparent primer. So the canvas is actually sealed. This is, for instance, these raw areas aren't actually a raw surface.
Right.
I see, but it allows the color of the...
Yeah, it's not so heavy, and there are not so many coats on that it blocks off the surface. The weave of the surface of the canvas is still there, so it allows the paint to actually still pull back into it.
Okay, there are a lot of more questions.
And there was a lady in the corner wanted to ask a question, yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
When you had to step away from the black paint, did the paint change you, or did you change the paint?
Do you mean when I had to stop working on black?
Yeah.
No, I didn't have to change the paint because I could go back to the paintings later. I guess I just had to, you know, the daily life, you know, if there's you know, the car has to go in the garage, this has to be done, you know, the dog has to go to the vet, you know, all of these things, you go, oh God, you know what, you know, life's full of stuff at the moment, you know. So it's just not the day to be, or a week to be painting on black paintings, you know, so you wait till a bit of light comes into your life again, and you know, and off you go again, you know, so it's as simple as that.
So it's a relationship you have?
It's a relationship.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to step away.
Yeah, sometimes.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
For sure. Sometimes you have to step away. Just as sometimes when I'm working on a group of white paintings, I have to step away from it because the whole thing has become so amorphous and so kind of, you know, it's like air. You can't get hold of it. You know, it's like, where is this painting? You know, it's just a lot of white fluffy stuff. You know, how do I get my hands on it? And again, sometimes you have to step back from it and say, I've got to paint something a bit more solid in the world that actually makes me feel like I'm connected to something. You know, so it pushes and pulls all the time.
You have a very strong emotional relationship, I feel, with the work as you're doing the work. That's what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
I do. Yeah,
it's fascinating. Yeah. I have another question for you, because I'm just noticing so much of the work here feels almost like diptychs, that there's this duality of, I mean, you see this in so much of the work here. Can you just speak to that in terms of the composition of...
Right, yeah. If you take a canvas, a rectangular canvas, and you paint it in two halves, then you have made the two halves less than the whole. In a sense, you have, you know, you have sort of compositionally and consciously made a decision. Whilst if you bring two canvases together, you're making more than the whole of one. So it's a strange reversal of the other way around. The other thing that what I do is I don't start on the paintings with this one here and this one here, and I'm sort of I'll do a bit of blue, and I'll do a bit of black. I make a decision that this blank canvas will go with this blank canvas. Yep. And then I work on the black one. And I may not touch the blue one.
Are these in two separate places in the
Two
studio?
separate places,
Okay.
yeah.
And then you decide to bring them together. You're basically curating that together.
Yeah.
See
So
what
the decision is made to join them together at the beginning, or that they will go together at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to end up with, say, 20 black halves and 20 other halves, and then play mix and match.
Right.
That doesn't intrigue me at all. Well, you know, that's just like a game. But it does intrigue me to take, if you like, an intent in one half and an intent in another half, on the understanding that there may be a relationship. But actually, until the two are finished and you bring them together, you don't know what that relationship is. So when I first bring the two together, they're both finished, and it's like, oh, is that what it is?
Well, that's interesting.
And then I have to decide, is it a good painting or a bad painting? If it's a bad painting, then again I have to drop the whole idea and start on another painting. if you take the blank canvas and you
Yes.
take the blank canvas,
Yeah.
and we call this A and we call this B,
Yes,
then A and B will always stay together.
right. But when you first start the work, do you know that A is going with B?
Yes.
Oh, you do, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have the chance, it doesn't have the possibility to go with C.
There's no mixing and matching?
No,
going
no,
on.
that can't go on. That can't go on.
Okay.
It has to stay with, A and B have to stay together. They either have to live together or die together.
Yeah, otherwise you're scrapping it and you're gonna, and you talked to me about this early on, that when you start something, if it doesn't look like it's going the right way, you stop.
I abandon it.
You do.
Yeah.
It's gotta be right from start to finish, and again, to me, that is very sculptural, because if you were sculpting and it didn't go well, you'd say, well, we have to
Yeah,
start fresh.
it's to do with, I like, especially in the more open halves, not the more monochrome halves, or for instance, in the white half over there and the black half here.
Yes.
I like all of the evidence of painting
Yes.
to actually, or the act of painting to actually be evident in the painting, to be viewable in the painting.
Yes.
So I don't work on a painting, and if it's getting out of control kind of thing, well, if I kind of cover all that up
Yeah.
and I start again, I can solve the painting. I never do that. If it gets to the point where I just feel the composition has got too complex, or has got too fussy, or has just got too leaden and too heavy,
It's wrong.
then it's wrong.
Yeah.
And then I unstretch it and I start again.
It's amazing. In a way, it's almost like a performance. You see
Yes, it is. It's very close to someone like
Yeah.
a professional athlete who repeats the same activity over and over again in order to perfect it.
Right. I was thinking, or dance.
A dance,
Where
yeah,
it has to be done with
Yeah.
great precision.
Yeah, and you have to sort of reach the ping point, where it's sort of spot on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I think that may be the highest point we could end on, because I know that in terms of our control, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And Ian, thank you.
Well,
for
thank you,
joining us.
Hillary.
What an honor.
Thank you, Hillary.